I see a lot of questions from folks who want to know if a pen can be eyedroppered. What I would like to know is why would you other than massive ink capacity? Pros and cons of an eyedropper versus a pen using any other filling mechanism would be welcome. Okay, so I'm not going to get into like all filling mechanisms because that would blow this question into an entire Q&A, which I can't remember if I ever did. I used to do themed Q&As like way back in the day. I got away from them because it was too hard to come up with a whole Q&A with themed questions. I really can't recall. I probably should have looked that up. Whatever. You tell me. You can look it up. If you remember and I've done it, I don't know. I've covered a lot of filling mechanism questions over the years that I've been doing Q&A. But anyway, I'll cover it now. So this was kind of a different kind of question, a little spin on the eyedropper thing that I've gotten before. So eyedropper. So for those of you that don't know what an eyedropper is, forgive me, I'm going to get basic here for a second. Eyedropper is essentially when you have a pen that it's a cartridge converter pen generally, and if you have a cartridge converter pen that you don't want to use a cartridge or you don't want to have a converter, you can then, to remove them, you can, if the body is all sealed up, you can then put an O-ring on it or maybe some silicone grease on the threads. In whatever fashion you seal up the threads, you fill the body with ink and then you close it up. That leaves you with a large ink capacity, larger than you would have just in this tiny little converter or a cartridge. And then, so that's the main benefit. So that's what you talked about. Why would you do other than having large ink capacity? Well, the whole large ink capacity thing is kind of funny because what happens is the larger your ink capacity, the larger, the greater your chances of having issues with it when the ink level gets low. So you get burping and spilling and things like that because as the ink level gets low, you get a lot more air inside the pen and the ink in their state becomes unstable. Like it's hard for it to equalize and stuff like that. It's actually an interesting kind of debate that I've had even with some folks in the pen community about, is it the heat from your hand that expands and causes it to burp out? But then if you look up like the physical properties of air as it expands, is it expanding enough to really move the ink that much? There's some debate about that. I think as much of the debate is when there's a lot of air in there, just the ink, which is mostly water inside the pen, just becomes really unstable, and the act of moving it around causes it to just kind of do that. So I don't really know exactly the physical properties. It's something interesting to investigate. I'm not a scientist, so maybe if you are a scientist type out there, that would be an interesting thing for you to dig into a little bit. Why do eyedropper pens leak when they get low? But whatever the cause, it's definitely something that happens on a fairly consistent basis. It's not like a guarantee it's always going to happen, but when it does happen, I'm like, yep, there it is again. Across all kinds of eyedropper pens, the larger the pen with the ink capacity, the larger it's going to happen. So it does kind of like bring up a question of like, well, if you have this, 4 milliliter ink capacity, which is not what this Preppy is, I just went with 4 because that's what it is. That's the number I gave. For example purposes, let's say it's 4. If you got a 4 milliliter ink capacity and any less than a milliliter and a half, it starts to become unstable and burp all the time, well then you got to keep refilling it. You really only have about a 2.5 millimeter ink capacity. Well, it's still greater than a regular ink capacity. It's still greater than a converter, cartridge, whatever. So it does still, you may not be getting like 6 times the ink capacity that you normally would, but you're still getting like 2 to 3 times. So it's still, that's a lot of the benefit. Some of the other things going on though, cost could be one benefit. So for example, Platinum Preppy, cheap pen for all, really on all accounts, $4, $5, depending on the nib size you're getting and whatnot. The converter itself is more than the cost of the pen. So if you don't want to have, especially if you want to buy a bunch of them and ink them up with all different colors, which is very common with a Preppy, you can buy a pack of O-rings and a silicone grease, and you can eyedropper convert your pens way cheaper than you can by using converters or thus cartridges. So that is one reason. Cost effectiveness. Obviously the more pens you do it to, the greater the thing, but that's how it works. So that is one reason. Another one is convenience. So a pen like the Kaweco Sport, right? So it is too short to take a converter, except for the Kaweco converter, which I forgot to mention earlier. We are going to be carrying the Kaweco converters, It's really weird though. I probably should have mentioned this separately anyway, but the Kaweco converters, they're better than the converters they've had before. They don't fit all of the metal pens. They're kind of inconsistent. We're still trying to figure out what's up with that. It's fitting all of our brass ones, but it's only fitting certain nib sizes of the All Sport and the Raw Sport. And we're like, what is the pattern here? I don't know if it's a design thing or an inconsistent thing, whatever. But either way, it fits the plastic ones, which is the ones that you can eyedropper convert anyway, so I don't know. So anyway, so you can use a converter, this converter in it, or you can use a cartridge. But this is a very common pen for eyedropper conversion, right? So if you eyedropper convert this, it's a convenience factor over using cartridges. Or, well, in this case now you've got the converter, but it hasn't been available until like basically right now. So it's a convenience thing. You don't have to refill the pen quite as often. You don't have to deal with cartridges. You get more ink options than if you were just using cartridges on a cartridge-only pen such as this. So that could be a reason why you would do an eyedropper conversion. Another one would be aesthetics. You know, like for example, I got this little Kaweco here, so I'm just gonna, you know, it's got a clear body. This is the Ice Sport. And, you know, if I have a little ink here, I'll do a little demonstration for doing an eyedropper. So, you know, this is just a little inky water. It's not real ink, but it gives you the idea of what's going on. So I eyedropper convert it. Granted, I haven't sealed up the threads on this, but for demonstration purposes, that will get you the idea of what's going on. I'm going to dump it out as soon as this video is done anyway. You get to watch it slosh back and forth, and that's just kind of cool. You know, there's a neat little, like, ooh, aesthetic thing to it. So there's that reason. For no other reason, you just like to watch the ink slosh back and forth. That is enough reason for you to eyedropper convert a pen. So there's that. And then the drawbacks are really going to be just kind of the burping and then having to clean it out, you know, because you're getting the ink all over the body of the pen. If you have an ink that's kind of clingy, when you go to clean it out, it's going to be a lot more to have to clean out, especially because you're going to be more inclined to eyedropper convert your clear pens, your demonstrator pens. And then, of course, ink is going to get all in the nooks and crannies. And if you have a clingier, harder to clean ink, it's going to be more of a pain to clean out. So you're just not going to want to change colors nearly as often. So that's kind of the drawbacks. But that gives you at least a little bit more insight into the whole eyedropper conversion thing. So hopefully that helps you out.